In far north Queensland, the Daintree rainforest meets the Coral Sea, a place of wild beauty and peace. But in October 2018, this paradise became the scene of a crime that shocked Australia. The seclusion and tranquility that drew people here would play a role in a tragedy that shattered the community. This is the story of Toya Cordingly, a vibrant young woman whose life was stolen in a place meant for solace. Her loss would ignite a desperate search for justice and leave a scar on paradise. On October 21st, 2018, Toya Cordingly set out for a walk on Wangeti Beach with her dog, Indy. She was a beloved daughter, friend, and animal lover, her life full of promise. When she didn't return home, concern quickly turned to panic. Her phone was off and her family reported her missing that night. The search began immediately, but hope faded as hours passed. A day that began in sunshine ended in fear and uncertainty. News of Toya's disappearance spread rapidly through Cairns, uniting the community in worry. Friends, family, and strangers searched Wangeti Beach through the night. They found her car untouched and Indy tied cruelly to a tree, clear signs something was wrong. At dawn, Toya's father made a devastating discovery, Toya's body partially buried in the sand. The brutality of the scene stunned everyone. The beach was now a crime scene, and the community's sense of safety was shattered. A vibrant life was lost, and a nightmare had begun. Toya's Sunday began like countless others, shopping at the market, chatting with her boyfriend, planning a peaceful walk with Indy. Wangeti Beach was her sanctuary, a place she'd visited many times for solitude and nature. She left home in the afternoon, expecting nothing but tranquility. No one imagined this ordinary day would be her last. The vanishing had already begun, unnoticed. Toya drove her blue Mitsubishi Lancer north along the scenic Captain Cook Highway rainforest on one side, ocean on the other. She passed busy beaches, heading for the quiet isolation of Wangeti. She parked at the southern access, a familiar spot for locals seeking peace. With Indy by her side, she stepped onto the empty beach, her final steps. The last certainty in her timeline was this moment of calm. What followed would unravel a tragedy that no one saw coming. As the sun began its slow descent towards the horizon, casting long shadows across the sand, the peace of the afternoon began to curdle into concern. Back at home, Toya's boyfriend, Marco, started to feel a nagging sense of unease. The hours had stretched on, and there was still no word from Toya. A walk on the beach shouldn't take this long, not even a leisurely one. He tried calling her mobile phone, expecting to hear her bright, cheerful voice on the other end. But the call went unanswered. He tried again, and then again. Each time the result was the same, silence, followed by the impersonal monotone of voicemail. The silence was unnerving, a stark contrast to Toya's usually communicative nature. This was completely out of character for her. Toya was responsible and considerate, the type of person who would always send a quick text to say she was running late or that her plans had changed. The lack of any response was a glaring red flag. Marco's mind likely raced through the possibilities. Had she lost track of time? Did her phone battery die? Or had something more sinister happened? The isolation of Wangeti Beach, once a source of its appeal, now seemed menacing. He knew how much she loved that spot, but he also knew how deserted it could be. The growing darkness outside mirrored the growing darkness of his fears. His anxiety mounting with each passing hour, Marco reached out to Toya's family. He contacted her stepbrother, sharing his concerns that Toya had not returned from her walk and was not answering her phone. This call set off a chain reaction of alarm among her close-knit blended family. The worry was no longer one person's burden. It was a shared, escalating crisis. Her parents, Troy and Vanessa, and her stepfather Darren were soon alerted. The web of communication expanded as friends were called. each conversation laced with a growing sense of urgency and dread. The question was on everyone's lips. Has anyone heard from Toya? By 9 o'clock that evening, the situation had become undeniable. This was not a simple case of someone being late. Something was seriously wrong. The family's attempts to reach her continued to fail, each unanswered call amplifying their terror. The window for a simple, innocent explanation was closing rapidly. After nearly 2 more hours of frantic waiting and hoping, the decision was made. At 10:50 p.m., more than 8 hours after Toya had set out for her walk, her family made the official call to the police. Toya Cordingly was formally reported as a missing person. The official search was about to begin, but for her desperate family, the nightmare had already been raging for hours. The moment a loved one is officially declared missing, a strange and terrible new reality sets in. For Toya's family, the hours between reporting her missing and the first light of dawn must have been an eternity of torment. The official police procedures, while necessary, can feel agonizingly slow to those caught in the storm of personal crisis. While authorities began coordinating a formal search plan, her family and friends could not simply sit and wait. Fueled by adrenaline and a desperate need to do something, they organized their own search party, determined to find Toya themselves. They gathered flashlights, bundled into cars, and headed north into the darkness towards Wangeti Beach. The drive to the beach in the dead of night would have been fraught with a palpable sense of dread. The familiar, scenic highway would have appeared sinister, its winding curves hiding unknown dangers in the shadows. When they arrived at the deserted car park, their worst fears began to solidify. There it was, Toya's blue Mitsubishi Lancer, parked exactly where she had left it hours before. The car was a silent testament to the fact that she had made it to the beach, but it offered no clues as to why she had never left. Its presence was both a beacon of hope, she must be nearby, and a monument to their terror. The search began in earnest, a frantic sweep of the beach and surrounding bushland under the narrow beams of their flashlights. They called her name into the roaring sound of the surf, their voices swallowed by the immense darkness. The area was vast and disorienting at night. The dense subtropical vegetation that bordered the sand felt impenetrable, a wall of tangled vines and unseen creatures. The family members fanned out, their hearts pounding with every rustle in the undergrowth, every shadow that danced in the wind. They were searching for any sign, any trace, a footprint, a piece of clothing, anything that could lead them to her. It was during this desperate, chaotic search that they made the first truly chilling discovery. They found Indy, Toya's beloved dog. The gentle giant was tied to a tree with a rope, pulled so taut that the poor animal was in visible distress, unable to sit or lie down. A wave of nausea and horror washed over the search party. This was not Toya's doing. She adored Indy, and would have sooner harmed herself than her dog. This was proof of a third party's involvement. Someone else had been here. Someone cruel. This discovery shifted the entire emotional landscape of the search from one of worried hope to one of stark terror. Foul play was no longer a suspicion, it was a certainty. To understand the depth of the tragedy that unfolded on Wangeti Beach, we must first understand the light that was extinguished. Toya Jade. Cordingly was not just a name in a headline, she was a vibrant and essential thread in the fabric of her community. Born on June 14, 1994, she was a true child of Cairns, a city known for its laid-back atmosphere and stunning natural beauty. She grew up surrounded by the lush greenery of the rainforest and the endless blue of the coral sea, environments that would profoundly shape her character and her passions. Her early life was rooted in this tropical paradise, a place that felt safe, familiar, and full of the promise of a bright and happy future. Toya was the only child of her parents, Troy Cordingly and Vanessa Gardner, who divorced when she was young. While the separation of parents can often be a source of turmoil, Toya's story was one of resilience and an expanded capacity for love. She navigated the complexities of a split family with a grace that seemed beyond her years, finding happiness and stability in two loving homes. This experience didn't diminish her world, it enlarged it. She became the cherished centerpiece of a wider, blended family, absorbing the love and support from all sides. This foundation of unconditional love from a broad network of parents and relatives helped forge her into the compassionate and open-hearted person she would become. Her upbringing in Cairns instilled in her a deep appreciation for the simple, beautiful things in life. She was not someone drawn to the hustle of big city life or the pursuit of material wealth. Instead, she found joy in the natural world that was her backyard. From a young age, she was captivated by the magic of her surroundings, a sentiment that would stay with her throughout her life. The community of Cairns itself, a melting pot of different cultures and lifestyles, likely contributed to her accepting and non-judgmental nature. She was a product of her environment in the best possible way, warm, relaxed, and deeply connected to the place she called home. This connection to her hometown was evident in everything she did. She worked locally, she socialized with a close-knit group of friends, and she spent her free time exploring the beaches, creeks, and rainforests that surrounded her. She was a familiar, friendly face to many in the community, known for her warm smile and gentle demeanor. Her identity was inextricably linked to Cairns. When she was so brutally taken, it wasn't just an attack on an individual. It was a violation of the community's sense of self and security. The girl from Cairns, who embodied so much of the region's spirit, had been stolen from the very landscape that had nurtured her. The core of Toya's world was her family. After her parents, Troy and Vanessa, went their separate ways, they both found new partners, creating a large and wonderfully unconventional blended family. Toya became the beloved link between these two households, cherished by her father Troy and his partner, and her mother Vanessa and her stepfather Darren Gard. Far from being a source of conflict, this arrangement created an expansive network of support and affection that enveloped Toya. She had multiple parental figures to guide her, more shoulders to lean on, and a home that was defined not by a single address, but by the presence of people who adored her. She was the sun around which these two family constellations orbited. This family was anything but ordinary. They were colourful, creative, and proudly individualistic, a vibrant tapestry of personalities who embraced life with passion. Tattoos, bold hairstyles, and a love for music and art were common threads. They were a family that celebrated uniqueness and encouraged self-expression, creating an environment where Toya felt free to be her authentic self. Her father, Troy, was a constant, steady presence in her life, sharing a deep and unbreakable bond with his only daughter. Her stepfather, Darren, also played a significant role, offering another source of fatherly love and support. The family photos they would later share show a group of people bound by genuine affection, laughter, and a fierce loyalty to one another. Toya's mother, Vanessa, was a guiding force in her life, a source of immense love and inspiration. The bond between mother and daughter was incredibly strong, built on a foundation of friendship and mutual respect. Vanessa nurtured Toya's gentle soul and encouraged her passions, especially her profound love for animals. The family's shared values of kindness, creativity, and individuality shaped Toya's worldview, teaching her to be open-minded, compassionate, and true to her own spirit. In this loving, bohemian environment, Toya blossomed. She was not just loved, she was celebrated for exactly who she was, quirks and all. This powerful family unit became the bedrock of strength that would be so desperately needed in the aftermath of her death. Their unity in grief was a testament to the world they had built around Toya. They stood together, a formidable front of love and sorrow, demanding justice for the girl who was the heart of their interconnected lives. The pain of her loss was not confined to one household, but was a shared agony that rippled through the entire extended family. They had lost their bright, unifying star, and the darkness that followed was a burden they would have to carry together. The love they had for Toya became their fuel for the long fight ahead. If there was one defining passion in Toya Cordingly's life, it was her profound and unwavering love for animals. This was not a casual interest, it was a core part of her identity, a calling that guided her actions and her career choices. She possessed a deep empathy for all living creatures, from the smallest insects to the largest mammals. This compassion was evident in her work as a pharmacy assistant, but it truly shone in her volunteer work at the Paws and Claws Refuge Centre in Cairns. Here she was in her element, dedicating her time and energy to caring for abandoned, neglected and abused animals, offering them the kindness and safety they had been denied. Her colleagues and friends often spoke of her as an animal whisperer. She had a natural, calming presence that seemed to put even the most anxious and fearful animals at ease. She didn't just clean cages and fill food bowls. She took the time to connect with each animal, to understand their individual personalities and needs. She championed the underdogs, the ones that were often overlooked, seeing the beautiful soul within each of them. Her social media feeds were a testament to this love, filled with pictures of foster animals, appeals for adoptions, and heartfelt messages about animal welfare. She used her voice to speak for those who could not speak for themselves. This passion was beautifully encapsulated in one of her final social media posts, a quote that served as a powerful mission statement for her life. It read, "No matter how talented, rich, or smart you are, how you treat animals tells me everything I need to know about you." This single sentence reveals the clarity of her moral compass. For Toya, kindness to animals was the ultimate measure of a person's character. It was a simple, profound belief that underscored her gentle and compassionate nature. It also adds a layer of cruel irony to her death, as she was a protector of the vulnerable who fell victim to senseless violence. Her own dog, Indy, was the living embodiment of this love. The massive, gentle crossbreed of German Shepherd, Mastiff and Great Dane was her constant companion and a beloved member of the family. Their bond was deep and symbiotic. She cared for him, and his steady presence brought her immense joy and comfort. The decision to take him for a walk on that fateful day was an act of love, a desire to give him the freedom and exercise he enjoyed. The fact that Indy was found tied to a tree, physically unharmed but clearly distressed, is one of the most haunting details of the case. The killer may have ended Toya's life, but they left behind the creature she loved most, a silent, furry witness to the horror. Toya Cordingly was a soul who danced to the beat of her own drum. Described by those who knew her as a free spirit, she was loving, daring, and touched with a hint of whimsical magic. She saw the world through a unique lens, finding beauty and wonder in places others might overlook. This was reflected in her personal style, which was a vibrant and ever-changing expression of her inner world. Her hair was a canvas, frequently dyed in bold shades of pink, purple, or bright red, though at the time of her death it was a striking icy blonde. This wasn't for attention, it was a joyful reflection of her creative and non-conformist spirit. Her interests were as eclectic and enchanting as her appearance. She had a deep fascination with fairies, folklore, and all things magical. This wasn't a childish fantasy, but rather an appreciation for the unseen wonders of the world, a belief that there was more to life than what meets the eye. This sense of wonder extended to her love of nature, which she saw not just as a beautiful backdrop, but as a living, breathing entity full of secrets and stories. She was the kind of person who might stop to admire the intricate pattern of a leaf or feel a deep connection to an ancient tree, finding a sense of peace and belonging in the wild. This free-spirited nature meant she was fiercely independent and adventurous. She was not afraid to stray from the beaten path, both literally and figuratively. Her choice to walk at the secluded Wangeti beach was characteristic of this. She sought solitude and a genuine connection with nature, away from the curated experiences of more popular tourist spots. She was comfortable in her own company and confident in her ability to navigate the world on her own terms. This independence was a source of strength, allowing her to live a life that was authentic and true to her values, unswayed by convention or the expectations of others. However, this beautiful, trusting nature and love for seclusion may have inadvertently made her vulnerable. She saw the good in the world, and likely did not approach a quiet walk on a familiar beach with a sense of fear or suspicion. She would have been in her sanctuary, her guard down, open to the peace of her surroundings. The evil that found her there was a brutal intrusion from a world she did not inhabit. It was a violent clash of two completely opposite energies, her gentle, trusting spirit and the dark, predatory impulse of her attacker. Her free spirit was not a flaw, it was her essence, and its violent destruction is what makes her story so profoundly heartbreaking. For the 2 years leading up to her death, Toya Cordingly's life was intertwined with that of her boyfriend, Marco. Their relationship was built on a foundation of shared passions and a deep mutual affection. Central to their connection was their shared love for animals, a passion that was more than a hobby but a fundamental part of who they were. Together, they doted on Indy, their massive and gentle dog who was less a pet and more a cherished family member. Their life together was filled with the simple joys of companionship, walks on the beach, quiet evenings at home, and the shared responsibility of caring for the animal they both adored. Their relationship appeared to be a stable and happy one, a partnership that promised a future. They had built a life together in Worry, a quiet suburb of Cairns. Life seemed to be moving forward with a sense of purpose and contentment. For a 24-year-old, Toya had found a level of stability and happiness that many seek. Her world was balanced between her loving family, her fulfilling work, her passionate volunteerism, and a loving partnership. There was no indication of significant turmoil or distress in her personal life. All signs pointed to a young woman who was happy, loved, and looking forward to what the future held. The final hours of her life were bookended by this relationship. Before heading to the beach, she spoke with Marco, a routine conversation that has since been imbued with a tragic finality. She told him her plans, a simple walk with Indy. It was Marco who first felt the cold tendrils of fear when she didn't return, his unanswered calls marking the transition from a normal afternoon to a potential crisis. His immediate concern and his actions in contacting her family underscore the closeness of their bond. He was the first to sense that something was terribly wrong, the first to sound the alarm that would set the tragic search into motion. In the aftermath of such a horrific crime, it is standard procedure for police to look closely at the victim's inner circle, particularly their romantic partners. Marco, along with Toya's stepfather Darren, was questioned by police in the initial stages of the investigation. However, both were quickly and definitively ruled out as persons of interest. The evidence simply did not point in their direction. Marco was left to grapple not only with the devastating loss of the woman he loved, but also with the harsh glare of initial suspicion that is often an unavoidable part of such investigations. His life, like that of Toya's family, was shattered in an instant, leaving behind only memories of a shared life full of promise that was brutally cut short. The formal report of Toya Cordingly as a missing person at 10:50 p.m. on Sunday, October 21, 2018, marked the official start of an operation, but for her family, the nightmare had been unfolding for hours. The period between that phone call and the first light of dawn was a hollow, agonizing void filled with a terrifying mix of hope and dread. Every passing minute felt like an hour, each tick of the clock a hammer blow against their dwindling optimism. While police procedures were set into motion, her family and friends couldn't bear the thought of simply waiting by the phone. A primal need to act, to do something tangible, took over. They decided they had to search for her themselves, unable to remain idle while she was out there, somewhere in the dark. A small, determined group, led by raw emotion and desperation, assembled to head north to Wangeti Beach. The journey itself, usually a scenic drive, was now a grim pilgrimage into the unknown. The familiar curves of the Captain Cook Highway were cloaked in darkness, the rhythmic sound of the unseen ocean beside them serving as a constant, haunting reminder of Toya's last known location. The atmosphere in the car would have been thick with unspoken fears. They were a civilian search party, armed only with flashlights and a fierce love for Toya, venturing into a vast and wild landscape that suddenly seemed deeply menacing and unwelcoming. Upon their arrival at the southern car park, the sight of Toya's blue Mitsubishi Lancer was a gut-wrenching confirmation. It stood there, silent and empty, exactly where she had left it what felt like a lifetime ago. The car's presence was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it meant she had to be nearby, offering a sliver of hope that they might find her huddled and waiting for help. On the other, it cemented the fact that she had not left the area, deepening the mystery of her disappearance and making the possibility of an accident or foul play feel terrifyingly real. The isolation of the spot, with no other cars or people around, amplified their sense of vulnerability and the scale of the task ahead. Under the faint glow of a partial moon and the narrow beams of their torches, they began their desperate search. They called out her name, their voices strained with anxiety, the sound swallowed by the constant roar of the surf and the rustle of the wind through the coastal vegetation. The beach stretched out before them, an immense dark canvas that offered no easy answers. The dense, tangled bushland that bordered the dunes felt like an impenetrable wall, hiding its secrets. They were ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary and terrifying situation, searching for a loved one in the vast darkness, all while praying they wouldn't find what they feared most. As the initial, frantic search party combed the dark beach, Toya's father, Troy Cordingly, was a man possessed by a singular, desperate mission. You know, a father's instinct to protect his child is one of the most powerful forces in nature, and for Troy, that instinct was now channeled into a relentless search for his only daughter. He moved through the darkness with a grim determination, his flashlight beam cutting across the sand and into the tangled scrub. He knew Toya, he knew her spirit, and he knew this silent, empty beach was not where she was supposed to be. The weight of every possible horrific scenario pressed down on him, but he pushed it aside, focusing only on the next step, the next patch of sand to illuminate. The search was disorganized, fueled by panic rather than strategy. The family and friends spread out, their individual lights bobbing like lost stars in the immense darkness. They explored the beach access track, checked the area around her car again and again, and walked the shoreline, their eyes scanning for any sign of a struggle, any piece of clothing, any footprint that didn't belong. The vastness of the area was overwhelming. Wangeti Beach is not a small, contained cove. It is a long, sweeping expanse of coastline. To search it effectively in the dead of night without professional equipment was a near impossible task. Honestly, a testament to their love and desperation. Troy, along with Toya's stepfather Darren and other friends, pushed on through the early hours of Monday morning. As the first hint of dawn began to break on the horizon, painting the sky in pale shades of grey and pink, the search took on a new urgency. The growing light revealed the true scale of the landscape they were trying to cover, but it also offered the hope that they might finally see something they had missed in the dark. The transition from night to day brought no relief, only a renewed sense of anxiety. With the light came the stark, unavoidable reality of their situation. Toya had been missing all night. The family coordinated their efforts with the State Emergency Service, who were now arriving to launch a full-scale official search. But Troy and his group did not stop. They had a head start, and they were not about to hand over the responsibility and stand by idly. They were driven by a personal connection, a deep, gnawing fear that only a parent can know. They continued their sweep of the dunes and the shoreline, their hope now a fragile, flickering candle against a storm of impending dread. The sun was rising on a new day, but for Toya's family, the world was about to become permanently darker. During the frantic search in the pre-dawn light, the group made a discovery that shifted their fear into absolute terror. Not far from where Toya's car was parked, they found him. Indy, Toya's enormous and deeply loved dog, was located, but the sight was not one of relief. The gentle giant was tied fast to a tree, his lead wrapped so tightly that he was in clear distress. He was unable to sit, unable to lie down, held in a cruel and unnatural position. For anyone who knew Toya, this was the most damning piece of evidence they could possibly find. It was a clear and unambiguous signal that something terrible had happened. Toya adored Indy. He was her shadow, her companion, her fur-covered child. The idea that she would ever restrain him in such a painful and restrictive manner was simply unthinkable. It was a complete violation of her character and her deep love for animals. This was not the work of a person who had simply gotten lost or had an accident. This was a deliberate, malicious act. The person who had tied Indy to that tree was not Toya. It was someone else, someone who had been with her, and someone who possessed a capacity for cruelty. The discovery of the distressed dog was a silent, screaming confirmation of foul play. The implications of this find were chilling. Why was Indy tied up, but left physically unharmed? The dog was large and potentially protective. Did this mean the attacker was someone Indy knew? Someone the dog did not perceive as a threat until it was too late? Or was the act of tying him up a calculated move by a stranger to neutralize a potential obstacle? These questions would become central to the police investigation, but for the family in that moment, the only thing that mattered was the horrifying message it sent. The hope of finding Toya safe was evaporating with every passing second, replaced by a cold, sickening certainty that she had met a violent end. The sight of Indy, helpless and distressed, was a cruel and heartbreaking clue. It transformed the search from a mission to find a missing person into a grim hunt for a victim. The atmosphere among the search party changed instantly. The frantic calls of her name quieted, replaced by a heavy, somber silence as the full weight of the situation crashed down upon them. They had found the first piece of the puzzle, and it pointed towards an unimaginable conclusion. The beautiful, peaceful beach was now tainted with an aura of violence, and the search for Toya was now a search for her body. As the sun climbed higher in the sky on that Monday morning, the tide began to recede, pulling the water back from the shore and exposing a wider stretch of sand. It was this natural, daily rhythm of the ocean that would reveal the final, devastating truth. Toya's father, Troy, continued his methodical search of the sand dunes, the soft, sandy hills that separated the beach from the dense coastal bushland. He was moving through the area just north of the beach access track, his eyes scanning every inch of the ground when he saw something. Something that didn't belong. Something that made his blood run cold. Sticking out of the sand, partially uncovered by the shifting winds and the receding tide, was a human limb. It was a detail so horrific, so surreal that it defied comprehension. For a moment, his mind likely struggled to process what his eyes were seeing. This was the stuff of nightmares, not the reality of a sunny morning on a familiar beach. But the truth was undeniable. He had found her. He had found his daughter. The frantic, desperate search had come to the most gut-wrenching conclusion possible. The hope he had clung to throughout the longest night of his life was extinguished in that single, horrific moment of discovery. Toya's body had been hastily buried in a shallow grave in the dunes, a desperate attempt by her killer to conceal their crime. She had been brutally attacked, her body bearing the horrific marks of a violent struggle. It was clear she had fought for her life with every ounce of her strength. She had been stripped of her clothing, a final, dehumanizing act of violence. The scene was one of utter devastation, a sacred place of natural beauty transformed into a place of unimaginable horror. For a father to find his child in such a state is a trauma beyond description, a wound that will never fully heal. The discovery sent a shockwave through the search party. The anguished cries that followed confirmed the worst for everyone involved. The search was over. The police were immediately notified, and the area was cordoned off. The personal, desperate search by a loving family had now officially become a homicide investigation. Troy Cordingly had set out to find his daughter, and he had succeeded, but in the most heartbreaking way imaginable. He had brought the search to an end, but in doing so had to confront the absolute worst of humanity, and a loss that would forever change him and his family. In the moments following Troy Cordingly's horrific discovery, the serene atmosphere of Wangeti Beach was shattered completely. What was once a tranquil stretch of sand known for its beauty and seclusion was instantly transformed into a major crime scene. The arrival of the first police cars was swift, their flashing lights a stark and jarring intrusion against the natural backdrop of green rainforest and blue sea. The area was immediately secured with long strips of yellow and black police tape cordoning off a large section of the dunes and the beach. The family and friends who had been searching were ushered away, their personal grief now secondary to the cold, methodical process of a homicide investigation. Forensic officers, dressed in sterile white overalls, descended upon the dunes. They moved with a quiet, focused intensity, their task to meticulously document and preserve every potential piece of evidence from the disturbed sand. Every footprint, every fibre, every grain of sand was now a potential clue that could lead them to Toya's killer. The area was photographed from every conceivable angle, and a grid search was established to ensure that nothing was missed. The process was slow and painstaking, a stark contrast to the frantic, emotional search that had preceded it. The beach was no longer a place of solace. It was a puzzle of violence that had to be carefully pieced together. The news of the discovery spread like wildfire, first through the tight-knit community of Cairns and then across the entire nation. The initial reports of a missing woman had now escalated into a confirmed homicide, and the public's concern turned to shock, grief, and outrage. The name Toya Cordingly was suddenly on everyone's lips, her smiling face flashing across television screens and news websites. The brutal nature of the crime, combined with the idyllic setting, created a story that captured the nation's attention and horror. The community of Cairns was plunged into a state of collective mourning and fear. If this could happen at Wangeti Beach, could it happen anywhere? For Toya's family, the discovery marked the beginning of a new and terrible chapter. Their search for her was over, but their fight for justice was just beginning. They were thrust into the harsh, unforgiving spotlight of a high-profile murder case, forced to navigate their profound, private grief while dealing with police interviews and intense media scrutiny. The place where Toya had found so much peace and happiness had become the site of her final, terrifying moments. The paradise had been violated, becoming a permanent monument to their loss, its beauty forever stained by the memory of the day it became a crime scene. With Wangeti Beach officially declared a homicide scene, a massive police investigation, codenamed Operation Quebec Tamarind, swung into action. The first 48 hours are the most critical in any murder inquiry, and detectives from the Far North District and the state's Homicide Investigation Unit were under immense pressure to find answers quickly. The initial focus was on piecing together Toya's final movements with absolute precision. Investigators meticulously retraced her steps, from her visit to Rusty's Market to her drive along the Captain Cook Highway. They scoured CCTV footage from businesses and traffic cameras along the route, searching for her blue Mitsubishi Lancer and, more importantly, for any other vehicles that seemed out of place or were tailing her. Every detail, no matter how small, was scrutinized for its potential significance in a timeline that had ended so violently. As is standard protocol in such cases, the investigation began with those closest to the victim. Detectives conducted extensive interviews with Toya's family, friends, and her boyfriend, Marco. This is not necessarily an act of suspicion, but a crucial part of the process to build a complete picture of the victim's life, relationships, and state of mind. They needed to know if there were any conflicts, any hidden fears, or any recent changes in her behaviour that might point to a motive. Toya's boyfriend, Marco, and her stepfather, Darren Gard, were both questioned as a matter of course. However, investigators were quickly able to verify their alibis and movements, and both men were formally and publicly cleared of any involvement, allowing police to widen their net. Simultaneously, the forensic examination of the crime scene was yielding its first crucial clues. The shallow grave in the dunes told a story of a frantic and hurried attempt at concealment. The evidence on Toya's body spoke of a ferocious struggle, She had fought back against her attacker with incredible bravery. This was a vital piece of information. Her resistance meant there was a high probability that she had left her own mark on the killer. Forensic swabs were taken from beneath her fingernails and from her body, with investigators hopeful that she had managed to scratch or bite her assailant, forcing a transfer of his DNA. This biological evidence, they knew, could be the key to identifying the person responsible for this horrific act. The public, reeling from the news, responded with an outpouring of support and information. A dedicated hotline was established, and police were inundated with calls. More than 500 tips flooded in within the first few days. People who had been at or near Wangeti Beach on that Sunday came forward, reporting anything they had seen that seemed unusual. One line of inquiry focused on reports of men who had been acting strangely or aggressively towards women on local beaches in the weeks prior. Detectives worked tirelessly to sift through this mountain of information, chasing down every lead, hoping that one of these threads would lead them out of the darkness and towards the identity of a killer who was still at large. While detectives on the ground pursued leads from the public, the most critical work was happening behind the scenes in a forensic laboratory. The swabs taken from Toya's body and the crime scene were subjected to painstaking analysis. Investigators knew their strongest chance of solving this crime lay in the microscopic traces the killer might have left behind. The fact that Toya had fought back so fiercely was their greatest hope. Her final, brave act of defiance could provide the very evidence needed to bring her killer to justice. The entire investigation seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the results that could change everything, hoping for a definitive genetic fingerprint that would point them in the right direction. The breakthrough came sooner than anyone expected. The laboratory analysis was successful. Scientists were able to isolate a full DNA profile from the evidence collected from Toya's body. Crucially, this profile did not belong to Toya, her boyfriend, or anyone in her immediate circle who had already been ruled out. It was the DNA of an unknown male. This was a monumental development. The police now had a definitive genetic signature of the man they were hunting. They had, in essence, an invisible wanted poster. The challenge was no longer about finding a suspect. It was about finding the person who matched this specific DNA profile from a population of millions. With this powerful tool in hand, investigators could now operate with a new level of certainty. The DNA profile became the central pillar of the entire case. It allowed them to definitively eliminate individuals and to focus their resources with laser precision. Police began a widespread voluntary DNA testing campaign in the Cairns area. They asked hundreds of men to provide swabs, hoping for a direct match or a familial link that could lead them to their suspect. This process was extensive and time-consuming, but it was a necessary step to narrow down the pool of potential culprits. The killer's DNA was the silent witness, and the police were determined to make it speak. Alongside the DNA testing, the profile was run through the National Criminal Database. Investigators cross-referenced it against the DNA of known offenders, praying for a hit that would give them a name and a face instantly. Unfortunately, this initial search came up empty. The DNA profile did not match anyone in the existing database. This was a frustrating but not entirely unexpected result. It suggested that their suspect was not a known violent criminal, or at least had never been caught and had his DNA profiled before. The killer was a ghost, but he had left his shadow behind. The police now had his unique code. They just had to find the man it belonged to. As the DNA screening continued, another critical piece of the puzzle emerged from the analysis of traffic camera footage and witness statements. Several people recalled seeing a car driving erratically on the Captain Cook Highway on the afternoon of Toya's murder. The vehicle was described as swerving and being driven in a manner that really drew attention. Police painstakingly cross-referenced these sightings with traffic data and vehicle registration records, using a methodical process of elimination. This digital detective work eventually led them to a specific vehicle of interest. The car was registered to a 34-year-old man living and working in the Cairns region. His name was Rajwinder Singh. This name immediately raised red flags for investigators. When they began to dig into Rajwinder Singh's background, they discovered a chilling coincidence that was just too significant to ignore. Singh, a full-time nurse at Innisfail Hospital, south of Cairns, had abruptly left his job, his wife, and his children and fled the country. He had boarded a flight from Cairns to Sydney, and then from Sydney to India, leaving his life in Australia behind without any explanation. The date of his departure was October 23, 2018, just 2 days after Toya was murdered, and only hours after her body was discovered. This was not the behaviour of an innocent man. The investigation now had a primary person of interest. Police focused their efforts on learning everything they could about Rajwinder Singh. They spoke to his shocked colleagues at the hospital, who reported that his behaviour had become strange and withdrawn in the days following the murder. More damningly, some witnesses came forward to say they had noticed visible injuries on him. He had fresh scratches and what appeared to be bite marks on his hands, arms, and face. These injuries were consistent with the kind of wounds a person would sustain while being fiercely attacked by someone fighting for their life, someone just like Toya Cordingly. The pieces were falling into place with terrifying clarity. The final conclusive link came when investigators approached Singh's family to request a DNA sample for comparison. With a sample obtained, they sent it to the lab to be tested against the unknown male profile recovered from Toya's body. The results came back as a direct match. The DNA found on Toya Cordingly belonged to Rajwinder Singh. Police finally had their man. They had his name, his face, and a trail of evidence that pointed directly to him. The only problem was that he was now thousands of kilometers away, having fled to one of the most populous countries on Earth. The mystery of who killed Toya was solved, but the challenge of capturing him was just beginning. With Rajwinder Singh identified as the prime suspect and confirmed to be in India, the nature of the investigation shifted dramatically. It was no longer a local homicide case. It had escalated into a complex international manhunt. Queensland Police immediately began working with the Australian Federal Police to navigate the intricate legal and diplomatic channels required to secure his arrest and extradition. An official arrest warrant was issued for Singh in Australia, but enforcing it on foreign soil would be a monumental task. The process of extradition between Australia and India is governed by a treaty, but it is notoriously slow and fraught with legal complexities and potential roadblocks. The first official step was to make a formal extradition request to the Indian government. This is a highly detailed legal process that requires Australian authorities to present a comprehensive brief of evidence to their Indian counterparts, demonstrating a clear and compelling case against the suspect. This file would have included the DNA evidence, witness statements regarding his injuries and erratic behaviour, and the damning timeline of his flight from the country. The Australian government had to convince the Indian judicial system that there was sufficient evidence to warrant arresting one of their citizens and sending him halfway across the world to stand trial for murder. While the wheels of diplomacy turned slowly, the hunt for Singh on the ground in India was a formidable challenge. India is a vast and diverse country with a population of over 1.4 billion people. A fugitive determined to disappear could easily melt into the crowds of a major city or seek refuge in a remote rural village. The Australian Federal Police worked closely with India's Central Bureau of Investigation, sharing intelligence and information to try and pinpoint his location. It was believed that Singh had returned to his home state of Punjab in northern India, but his exact whereabouts remained a mystery. He had effectively vanished, leaving his family in Australia and the Cordingly family in a painful state of limbo. Back in Australia, Toya's family and the Cairns community waited with bated breath. The public announcement that a suspect had been identified and had fled overseas was a bittersweet development. While it brought a sense of relief that the killer was known, it also introduced a new kind of agony, the fear that he might never be brought to justice. The Cordingly family became vocal advocates, keeping Toya's story in the public eye and putting pressure on politicians to ensure no stone was left unturned. The Queensland government even posted an unprecedented $1 million reward for information leading to Singh's capture, a clear signal of their determination to see this through no matter how long it took. For Toya Cordingly's family and the community of Cairns, the identification of Rajwinder Singh as the prime suspect marked the beginning of a new and agonizing chapter. The initial shock of the murder gave way to a long, frustrating, and painful waiting game. They knew who was responsible, the evidence was clear, but the wheels of international justice turned at a glacial pace. For 4 long years, from the moment Singh fled in late 2018, an unbearable silence seemed to descend over the case. The Cordingly family lived in a state of suspended grief, unable to fully mourn while the man accused of shattering their world remained a free man on the other side of the planet. This period was a testament to the family's incredible resilience and determination. They refused to let Toya's memory fade or for the pressure on authorities to wane. They became reluctant public figures, channeling their immense pain into a powerful campaign for justice. They gave interviews, organised memorials, and worked tirelessly to keep Toya's story in the headlines, ensuring that the public and politicians did not forget the debt of justice that was owed. Their advocacy was a constant, poignant reminder that behind the international legal wrangling was a family whose lives had been irrevocably broken and who deserved closure. They were fighting not just for Toya, but for a sense of resolution that felt increasingly out of reach. The Australian and Queensland governments continued their efforts behind the scenes, navigating the complex diplomatic relationship with India. The formal extradition request was submitted in March 2021, a significant legal milestone, yet it produced no immediate results. The case seemed to be stalled in a bureaucratic quagmire, a frustrating reality for a family desperate for progress. To reignite the search and incentivise public cooperation, the Queensland Police took an unprecedented step in November 2022, announcing a $1 million reward for information leading directly to Rajwinder Singh's arrest. It was the largest reward in the state's history, a clear signal that they would not give up the chase, no matter the cost or the time it took. This massive reward was a game-changer, designed to pierce the veil of silence that had protected Singh for so long. It elevated the search from a standard police matter to a high-stakes international manhunt with a life-changing prize attached. The announcement was broadcast globally, translated into multiple languages, and specifically targeted at communities in India. It was a bold strategy, a public declaration that the pursuit of justice for Toya Cordingly had no geographical boundaries and no expiration date. The family and investigators could only hope that this dramatic move would finally provide the breakthrough they had been waiting 4 long years to receive. While Toya's family waited in agony, Rajwinder Singh was living a furtive existence halfway across the world. After landing in India, he had made his way back to his native village of Butta Kalan in the state of Punjab. Here, among familiar faces and a culture he understood, he attempted to blend back into society and evade the consequences of his actions in Australia. For a time, he actually succeeded. He relied on the support of family and local contacts to remain hidden from the authorities who, were slowly but surely closing in on him. He lived the life of a fugitive, constantly looking over his shoulder, always aware that his past could catch up with him at any moment. To further conceal his identity and distance himself from the man who had fled Australia, Singh underwent a significant physical transformation. He shed the appearance of the clean-shaven nurse from Cairns and adopted the look of a devout Sikh man. He grew a long, thick beard and began wearing a turban, traditional markers of the faith that also served as a convenient and effective disguise. This change wasn't just cosmetic. It was a calculated attempt to melt into the local population, to become just another face in the crowd in a region where this appearance is, pretty commonplace. He was trying to erase Rajwinder Singh, the murder suspect, and become someone new. His life in hiding was reportedly one of routine and deliberate obscurity. He worked on the family farm, carrying out manual labor and trying to maintain a low profile. He also allegedly worked as a truck driver, a job that would have allowed him to move around the country without attracting undue attention. There were also reports that he had become more involved in religious activities, perhaps as part of his disguise or possibly as a genuine search for penance. He was a man living a double life, one as a farmhand and devotee, the other as a fugitive wanted for one of Australia's most high-profile murders. The weight of this secret must have been a constant and heavy burden. Despite his efforts to disappear, the net was slowly tightening. The collaboration between Australian and Indian authorities, though slow, was persistent. The announcement of the $1 million reward dramatically increased the pressure, turning his local community from a potential sanctuary into a potential source of betrayal. Every person he encountered was now someone who might be tempted by the life-changing sum of money. His disguise and quiet life could only protect him for so long. The international manhunt was gaining momentum, and his 4 years of freedom were rapidly coming to an end. The world he had built to hide in was about to crumble. The Queensland government's $1 million gamble paid off with stunning speed. Just weeks after the record-breaking reward was announced and publicised across India, authorities received the crucial piece of information they had been waiting 4 years for. A credible tip-off, believed to have come from someone within Singh's own circle, pinpointed his exact location. The lure of the massive reward had successfully broken through the wall of silence and loyalty that had been protecting him. The informant provided Indian law enforcement with the intelligence they needed to finally move in and make an arrest, turning the long, frustrating manhunt into a direct and actionable operation. On November 25, 2022, a team of officers from India's Central Bureau of Investigation, acting on the intelligence shared by the Australian Federal Police, descended on a location in New Delhi. The arrest was swift and decisive. They found Rajwinder Singh in the Indian capital, far from his village in Punjab, possibly in the process of moving again to evade capture. The man they took into custody looked vastly different from the photos circulated after the murder. With his long beard and turban, he was almost unrecognisable, but his identity was quickly confirmed. After 1,497 days on the run, the international manhunt for Toya Cordingly's alleged killer was finally over. The news of his capture sent a wave of profound relief through the community of Cairns and, most importantly, through Toya's family. The moment they had almost lost hope of ever seeing had finally arrived. For 4 years they had lived with the torment of knowing he was free, and now he was in custody. Toya's mother, Vanessa, described the moment as absolutely surreal, a culmination of years of pain, advocacy, and unwavering hope. The arrest was a monumental victory, a critical step towards the justice they had so fiercely fought for. The capture itself was not the end of the road, but it was the beginning of the end. Following his arrest, Singh was brought before a magistrate in New Delhi, where the formal extradition proceedings began. The capture was a triumph of international police cooperation and a testament to the effectiveness of the high-stakes reward strategy. It demonstrated a resolute commitment from Australian authorities to pursue justice across the globe, no matter the obstacles. The man who had fled his crime, changed his appearance, and hidden for years was now caught in the gears of the very legal system he had tried so desperately to escape. The long journey back to Australia to face the consequences of his actions had begun. During his initial court appearances in New Delhi as part of the extradition process, Rajwinder Singh made a series of shocking and unexpected statements. Rather than fighting his extradition to Australia, he seemed to embrace it, telling the Indian magistrate that he wanted to return to face the judicial system. In a stunning twist that honestly no one saw coming, he went even further. In the open courtroom, he confessed to killing Toya Cordingly. He told the court that he did not want to contest the evidence and admitted his guilt, stating that he wished to receive his punishment, even if it was the death penalty, which he mistakenly believed Australia still had. His account of the events of that fateful day was chilling. He claimed that he had been at Wangeti Beach following a heated argument with his wife over their dog. He was angry and distressed, and had brought a kitchen knife with him from home along with some fruit. It was in this agitated state, he alleged, that he crossed paths with Toya. He claimed that her dog, Indy, barked at him, triggering an explosive reaction. An argument erupted between him and Toya, which quickly escalated into a physical confrontation. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, he pulled out the knife he had brought with him and attacked her. The details he provided were horrifyingly blunt. He admitted to the brutal violence of the attack, acknowledging that he had ended her life in the dunes. Following the murder, he described how he had attempted to conceal his crime by burying Toya's body in a shallow grave in the sand. He also admitted to tying her dog, Indy, to a nearby tree before fleeing the scene, a detail that had so horrified Toya's family. His confession seemed to corroborate the key elements of the crime that investigators had pieced together, providing a narrative from the killer's own mouth that explained the senseless violence of that afternoon. This confession in an Indian court was a bombshell. It was a direct admission of guilt from the man who had hidden from justice for 4 years. While it seemed to provide the answers the Cordingly family had been desperate for, it also had to be viewed with legal caution. A confession made in a foreign jurisdiction, particularly one where the suspect might be seeking a faster legal process, would still need to be tested in an Australian court. Despite this, it was a powerful and damning statement. The man who had run so far had finally, it seemed, decided to stop running and admit to the terrible act he had committed on that beautiful, tragic day. Following his courtroom confession and his consent to be extradited, the complex process of transferring Rajwinder Singh from Indian to Australian custody was set in motion. After several months of legal and diplomatic formalities, the day finally came. In early March 2023, a team of Queensland police detectives flew to New Delhi to take custody of the man they had been pursuing for over 4 years. It was a deeply significant moment, the culmination of an exhaustive international effort. On March 1st, Singh was formally handed over to the Australian detectives, who then escorted him onto a specially chartered private jet for the long flight back to Queensland. The journey was a quiet, sombre affair, a stark contrast to the dramatic manhunt that had preceded it. Singh was flown directly from New Delhi to Cairns, the city he had fled in panic 4.5 years earlier. Upon landing at Cairns International Airport under a heavy police guard, he was officially back on Australian soil and formally charged with 1 count of murder. The sight of him being led from the plane by detectives was broadcast across the country, providing a powerful image of justice in motion. For the Cordingly family and the Cairns community, his return brought the case full circle, bringing the alleged killer back to the place where his horrific crime was committed. His first appearance in an Australian court took place in the Cairns Magistrates Court just hours after his arrival. The man in the dock was a world away from the clean-shaven nurse who had once worked in the region. With his long beard and weary expression, he listened as the murder charge was formally read out. He was not required to enter a plea at this stage, and his case was adjourned. Despite his earlier confession in India, the Australian legal process would start from the beginning, affording him a fair trial where the prosecution would have to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The successful extradition and return of Rajwinder Singh was a monumental achievement for law enforcement and a profoundly important milestone for Toya's family. The long, agonising wait for him to be captured and brought back was finally over. The man accused of stealing their daughter's life was now in a local jail, just kilometres from where they lived. While it offered a profound sense of relief, it also marked the beginning of the next arduous phase: the court proceedings. The path to a final verdict and sentencing was still long, but for the first time in years, justice for Toya Cordingly felt truly within reach. With Rajwinder Singh back on Australian soil and incarcerated in Cairns, the focus of the case shifted from an international manhunt to the meticulous and often slow-moving mechanics of the Australian judicial system. His return marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another one that would be fought not on the beaches or across continents, but within the formal, structured confines of a courtroom. Singh's first appearances were brief and procedural, establishing the charge of murder and setting a timeline for the prosecution to present its full brief of evidence to the defense. The confession he had made so dramatically in the Indian court held no official weight here under Australian law. He was presumed innocent until proven guilty, and the entire case had to be built and presented from scratch. For the prosecution, the task was to assemble a mountain of evidence into a coherent and compelling narrative that would prove Singh's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. This included the crucial DNA match the witness statements describing his injuries and flight from the country, the timeline of his movements, and the forensic evidence gathered from the crime scene at Wangeti Beach. Every piece of the puzzle that had been so painstakingly collected over the past 4.5 years would now be scrutinised, catalogued, and prepared for trial. The brief of evidence would be a comprehensive dossier detailing every aspect of the investigation, forming the backbone of the Crown's case against the accused. For Toya's family, this new phase brought with it a different kind of emotional burden. The relief of Singh's capture was now replaced by the grim reality of the legal process. They would have to endure pre-trial hearings where the horrific details of Toya's death would be discussed in cold, legalistic terms. They would have to place their faith in a system that, while designed to be fair, can also feel impersonal and agonizingly slow to those seeking closure. The journey through the courts would require a new kind of strength, a patient endurance to see the process through to its final conclusion, whatever that might be. The fight was far from over. It had simply moved to a new battleground. Rajwinder Singh was appointed legal aid, and a defence team was assembled to represent him. Their job was not to judge their client, but to ensure he received a fair trial and to rigorously test the prosecution's evidence. They would pore over every page of the brief, looking for inconsistencies, challenging forensic procedures, and preparing to build a defence for their client. The stage was being set for a complex legal battle. The initial hearings laid the groundwork for what would be one of the most high-profile murder trials in Queensland's history, with a family, a community, and a nation watching and waiting for justice to finally be served. As the pre-trial committal hearings began in late 2023, the case took an unexpected and startling turn, introducing a new and controversial element into the narrative. Rajwinder Singh's defence team, in a move designed to challenge the prosecution's case and potentially create reasonable doubt, revealed a new line of argument. They alleged that Toya Cordingly had been involved in a secret affair with another man, a local chiropractor named Dr. Tyson Franklin. This assertion sent a ripple of shock through the courtroom and the community, as it attempted to shift the focus away from their client and towards other individuals in Toya's life, suggesting alternative possibilities for who might have wanted to harm her. The defense presented text messages exchanged between Toya and Dr. Franklin, attempting to portray their relationship as something more than platonic. They argued that the nature of these communications suggested an intimacy that could point to a clandestine relationship. The implication was clear. If Toya was involved in a secret affair, it could introduce a motive of jealousy or conflict involving other parties. The defense team also sought to subpoena phone records belonging not only to Dr. Franklin, but also to Toya's boyfriend, Marco, suggesting they were exploring avenues that pointed away from the overwhelming evidence against their own client. This strategy, while common in criminal defense, was deeply painful for Toya's loved ones to witness. This new defense strategy was met with immediate and strong denials. Dr. Franklin, who had been a friend of Toya's, publicly refuted any suggestion of an affair, stating that their relationship was one of friendship and mentorship, and that the defense was twisting the facts to create a diversion. The prosecution maintained that this line of inquiry was irrelevant, a red herring designed to muddy the waters and distract from the compelling forensic evidence that tied Rajwinder Singh directly to the crime scene. They argued that regardless of Toya's personal relationships, the DNA found on her body belonged to Singh, and that was the central, undeniable fact of the case. The introduction of this new element was a source of immense distress for Toya's family. It felt like a violation of her memory, an attempt to posthumously cast shadows on her character in a public forum. They had already endured the horror of her murder and the agonizing wait for an arrest. Now they had to listen as her private life was dissected and distorted as part of a legal strategy. It was a cruel reminder that the road to justice is often fraught with painful and unexpected detours, and that the adversarial nature of the court system can sometimes feel as brutal as the crime itself. Just as it seemed the case was finally moving towards a trial, Toya Cordingly's family was dealt another devastating blow. In late 2023, Rajwinder Singh's legal team made an application to the court to have the trial delayed. They argued that the brief of evidence provided by the prosecution was immense, containing thousands of pages of documents, hundreds of hours of audio and video files, and complex forensic reports. They claimed they needed more time to adequately review this mountain of material in order to prepare a proper defense for their client, as is their right under the law. The request was for a significant postponement of the trial date. The prosecution argued against the delay, stating that the family had already waited long enough for justice and that the matter should proceed as scheduled. They believed the defense had been given ample time and resources to prepare. However, the judge ultimately had to weigh the need for a speedy trial against the fundamental right of the accused to a fair one, which includes having adequate time to prepare a defense. After considering the arguments, the judge granted the defense's request. The trial, which had been anticipated for 2024, was officially postponed, with a new tentative start date set for February 2025. For Toya's family, the news of the delay was crushing. After more than 5 years of unimaginable grief, after an international manhunt and a successful extradition, they were now being told they had to wait another year or more for their day in court. The postponement felt like a denial of closure, extending their painful limbo indefinitely. Every legal delay, while perhaps necessary from a procedural standpoint, was another turn of the screw for a family that had already endured so much. Their strength and patience were being tested to their absolute limits, and the finish line on their long road to justice had just been moved further into the horizon. This delay highlights one of the most frustrating aspects of the criminal justice system for victims' families. The legal process is designed to protect the rights of the accused, and its pace is dictated by procedure and legal necessity, not by the emotional needs of those who have suffered loss. While they understood the legal reasons, the emotional impact was profound. They were trapped in a holding pattern, unable to fully move forward with their lives while the court case loomed. The agony of waiting, which they had hoped was over, had returned, casting a long shadow over their hopes for a swift resolution. The prolonged legal process and the trial's delay have not only affected the Cordingly family, but have also kept the entire Cairns community in a state of suspended animation. Toya's murder was a deep wound inflicted on the collective psyche of the region, and it really shattered the sense of safety and tranquility that residents cherished. The case became a focal point for community grief and solidarity. From the initial search parties to the countless memorials and the Be Kind for Toya movement that sprang up, the community has been deeply invested in the outcome. They have waited alongside the family, sharing in their frustration and their longing for justice. The unresolved nature of the case continues to cast a pall over the region. Wangeti Beach, once a symbol of natural beauty and escape, is now forever linked with this tragedy. For many locals, it is just impossible to visit that stretch of sand without thinking of Toya and the horror that occurred there. The case serves as a constant, sobering reminder of the vulnerability that lies just beneath the surface of their idyllic paradise. The community is waiting for a verdict, for a final judgment that will allow them to close this dark chapter and begin the process of healing the scar left on their home. As the legal proceedings continue to unfold, there remain many unresolved questions that the public hopes the trial will answer. While Singh confessed in India, his narrative of a sudden argument over a dog feels simplistic to many, given the brutality of the crime. People wonder what truly happened in those final moments. Was it a random, explosive act of rage, or was there something more to the encounter? The trial is expected to shed more light on the forensic evidence and the precise sequence of events, hopefully providing a clearer, more complete picture of the truth, however painful it may be to hear. As of today, May 24th, 2024, Rajwinder Singh remains in custody, awaiting his trial scheduled for 2025. The Cordingly family, their friends, and the entire community of far north Queensland continue their long and painful vigil. They wait for the day when the evidence will be presented, the arguments will be made, and a jury will deliver a verdict. They wait for a final accounting for the life of a bright, compassionate, and vibrant young woman who was stolen from them far too soon. The road to justice has been incredibly long and arduous, and for Toya Cordingly, the final destination is still just over the horizon. In the years since her tragic death, Toya Cordingly's legacy has grown far beyond the horrifying headlines of her case. She is remembered not for the darkness of her final moments, but for the brilliant light she brought into the world during her 24 years of life. Her legacy is one of profound kindness, a gentle spirit that continues to inspire compassion and positive change within her community and beyond. The Be Kind for Toya movement, which emerged organically from the collective grief of those who knew her and those who were touched by her story, has become a powerful and enduring tribute. It is a simple yet profound call to action, encouraging people to perform acts of kindness in her memory, embodying the very essence of who she was. This legacy is most tangible in the area she was most passionate about: animal welfare. Toya's deep and unwavering love for all creatures has become a guiding light for many. Local animal shelters, including the one where she volunteered, have seen an increase in support, with donations and volunteer hours given in her name. Her story has highlighted the importance of compassion towards the most vulnerable, reminding people of her simple belief that how one treats animals is a true measure of their character. Her life's work, though tragically cut short, continues to have a ripple effect, saving and improving the lives of countless animals and ensuring her gentle spirit lives on through this vital work. Her family has been the fiercest guardian of this legacy. Through their unimaginable pain, they have chosen to celebrate the vibrant, free-spirited and loving person Toya was, rather than letting her be defined by the violence that took her away. They share photos of her smiling, her hair brightly coloured, her arms wrapped around a rescue dog. They speak of her love for fairies, her creativity, and her infectious laugh. By focusing on the beauty of her life, they have ensured that her memory is a source of inspiration, not just sorrow. They have taught a grieving community that the most powerful way to honour a life lost is to celebrate the love it created. Ultimately, Toya's legacy is a testament to the idea that a single, gentle soul can leave an indelible mark on the world. She has become a symbol of innocence and kindness in the face of brutality. The community initiatives, the memorials, and the constant reminders to be kind have woven her spirit into the very fabric of far north Queensland. She is no longer just a victim of a terrible crime. She is a beacon of light, a reminder of the goodness that exists in the world and the importance of nurturing it, protecting it, and spreading it in her honour. Her life, though brief, has created a legacy of compassion that will undoubtedly endure for generations. The long and arduous journey towards a final verdict in Toya Cordingly's case forces us to confront a difficult and profound question. What does justice truly mean in the face of such a senseless and brutal loss? For the Cordingly family, justice is not a concept of revenge or retribution. It is about accountability. It is about ensuring that the man responsible for shattering their world is held to account for his actions under the law. A guilty verdict and a lengthy prison sentence would provide a formal societal acknowledgement of the immense wrong that was done. It would be a declaration that Toya's life mattered, and that its violent end will not go unpunished. This is the tangible outcome they have fought for, However, the legal definition of justice can often feel incomplete when measured against the scale of personal tragedy. No court verdict, no matter how severe the sentence, can ever bring Toya back. It cannot erase the years of pain her family has endured, nor can it fill the void her absence has left in their lives. This is the heartbreaking reality for all families of murder victims. The justice delivered by the court system is procedural and punitive. It is not restorative. It can provide a sense of closure and an end to the agonizing legal process, but it can never truly heal the wound of loss. The family's search is for a sense of peace that the legal system alone cannot provide. The meaning of justice in this case has also expanded beyond the courtroom. For the community of Cairns, justice for Toya has also come to mean reclaiming their sense of safety and ensuring that such a tragedy never happens again. It has involved coming together, supporting one another, and fostering a culture of awareness and protection. Justice, in this broader sense, is about the community's response to the crime. It is about refusing to live in fear and choosing instead to honor Toya's memory by creating a kinder, more vigilant, and more connected community. This collective response is a powerful form of justice that exists independently of the legal outcome. As the trial looms, the hope for justice remains a powerful driving force. It is a multi-layered concept, encompassing legal accountability, personal closure, and communal healing. While the pending court case represents the most formal aspect of this pursuit, the true meaning of justice for Toya Cordingly will ultimately be defined by her enduring legacy of kindness and the strength of a family and community determined to not let darkness have the final word. The verdict will close a legal chapter, but the love for Toya and the fight to honor her memory will continue, providing a different, more enduring form of justice that no court can ever take away. The murder of Toya Cordingly did more than just take a single life. It irrevocably altered the character of a place. Far North Queensland has always been seen as an idyllic paradise, a laid-back sanctuary where the dangers of the world feel distant. The crime at Wangeti Beach shattered that illusion with brutal force. It introduced a chilling and unfamiliar fear into the community's daily life, proving that even in the most beautiful and secluded corners of the earth, unimaginable darkness can intrude. The sense of trust and security that locals once took for granted was profoundly shaken. The idea that a woman could not walk her dog on a familiar beach in broad daylight without facing mortal danger was a terrifying reality to confront. This loss of innocence has had a lasting impact on the region. Wangeti Beach itself, once a beloved escape for locals, is now forever enshrined as a place of sorrow and remembrance. It has become a memorial, a site of pilgrimage for those wishing to pay their respects, its natural beauty now viewed through a filter of tragedy. For many, especially women, the crime has changed how they interact with their environment. A new layer of caution and vigilance now accompanies activities that were once carefree, like hiking alone or visiting a deserted beach. The crime served as a brutal reminder that paradise has no immunity from the worst of human nature. The case also brought the community of Cairns together in an unprecedented display of solidarity. In the face of shared grief and fear, residents forged stronger bonds. The outpouring of support for the Cordingly family, the vigils, the memorials, and the widespread adoption of the Be Kind for Toya mantra demonstrated a community refusing to be broken by tragedy. They responded to an act of horrific violence with an overwhelming wave of love and compassion. This collective response has reshaped the community's identity, proving that its true strength lies not in its perceived safety from the outside world, but in its capacity for unity and kindness in the face of adversity. As the community and the Cordingly family await the final chapter of the legal saga, the changes to their paradise remain. The scars of this tragedy are now part of the landscape, a permanent reminder of the life that was lost and the innocence that was stolen. Yet from that deep wound, something resilient has grown. A community more aware, more connected, and more determined than ever to honour a gentle soul by championing the kindness she embodied. Paradise was changed forever by the events of October 21st, 2018. but in its response to the darkness, it found a new and more profound kind of light.